Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely.
Awesome. So today we're tackling a book, it's a bit over a century old, but it feels incredibly relevant even now. It's W.E.B. Du Bois' The Souls of Black Folk.
Oh, a classic.
Published back in 1903, we're right smack in the middle of the post-Reconstruction era. This book was huge, especially for Black America.
Oh, for sure. It really shook things up.
Yeah, and the thing is, it wasn't just about that specific historical moment.
Right.
Du Bois grapples with these big ideas like identity, progress, and this concept he calls the color line.
And those ideas, they still resonate so strongly today.
Totally. It's kind of wild how much hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So for this deep dive, we're going to zero in on a few key chapters, like where he lays out double consciousness.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
And then later, we'll get into his whole back and forth with Booker T. Washington about the best way for Black people to advance.
Ooh, that was a heated debate even back then.
Definitely. Definitely. And we can't forget about the chapter where he pulls in the myth of Atalanta to warn against chasing progress without considering the cost.
That's a powerful one, a message we all need to hear, I think.
I agree. Okay, so let's jump right into the souls of Black folk, starting with chapter 1 of our spiritual strivings.
Okay.
This is where Du Bois drops this bombshell concept, this double consciousness.
Yeah.
He's talking about that feeling of two-ness, this split identity that Black Americans experience. Being both American and Negro, but never fully fitting into either category.
It's like this constant awareness of how others see you. You're always measuring yourself against a world that views you with this mix of, curiosity, but also contempt, even pity sometimes.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff.
It is, for sure.
Du Bois, he doesn't just leave it as some abstract idea. He shares a really powerful story from his own childhood that brings it all home.
Oh, you mean the story about the visiting cards?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It seems like such a small thing,
Right. Buying visiting cards.
But it's in that moment that Du Bois realizes he's being seen differently, treated differently, and it's all because of his race.
It's like this sudden awakening to his otherness, a real gut punch.
Yeah, and reading it, you can almost feel the sting of that rejection, even after all these years.
Absolutely. It's a stark example of how even everyday experiences can reveal these deep-seated prejudices,
Totally. And that experience, that feeling of otherness, it really lays the foundation for his whole argument in the book.
Right.
Black Americans are trying to reconcile these two identities, American and Negro, without having to sacrifice one for the other.
It's like they're constantly being asked to choose, when in reality they're both fully both.
Yeah, and that must create so much inner turmoil, right?
Absolutely. It's a fight for recognition, a demand to be seen as whole people with their own unique perspectives and aspirations.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Okay, so moving on to chapter 2 of The Dawn of Freedom. Du Bois takes us into the era of Reconstruction. And I've got to say, this period in American history always feels a little confusing.
Oh, for sure. It's a messy time.
It's this mix of hope and upheaval,
Absolutely. You've got this surge of optimism, this promise of a new beginning for Black Americans after the Civil War, But
at the same time, there's this fierce pushback from those who want to cling to the old ways.
Right, like those deeply ingrained systems of racism and inequality, they're not going down without a fight.
It's like a tug of war between progress and regression. And Du Bois uses these two contrasting figures to symbolize the South during this time.
Oh, interesting.
You've got the bitter ex-slave owner clinging to the past, and the strong Black mother nurturing her children, trying to build a better future for them.
Oh, wow. What a powerful image.
Yeah, it really captures the tension of that era. The struggle between those who benefited from the old order and those who dared to dream of something different.
It's a fight that, sadly, continues to this day.
Okay, are you ready for chapter 3? Because this is where things get really exciting.
Okay, let's do it.
It's the Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington. And it's like watching a clash of titans,
Oh, yeah. Two heavyweights?
They were both these incredibly influential leaders, but their visions for how Black people should advance, well, this could have been more different.
That's such a debate that's still going on, in a way.
Totally. So on one side, you have Washington pushing for a more practical approach.
Right. Urging Black Americans to focus on things like vocational skills, economic self-sufficiency.
It's like he's saying, prove your worth.
Yeah. And by doing that, he argued they could gradually earn the respect of white society and eventually achieve true equality.
It's almost like keep your head down, work hard, and things will get better.
Right.
But I can see how that would be so frustrating for someone like Du Bois, who is demanding full equality right now, no compromises.
Exactly. Du Bois sees Washington's approach as a form of accommodation, like accepting a second-class citizenship.
And he's having none of that.
Nope. Du Bois wants full political, social, and economic equality, the whole package.
And this is where he brings up the talented 10th, right?
Yes. Du Bois envisioned this elite group of highly educated Black individuals, kind of like a leadership class, to guide the entire community toward progress.
He argued that by investing in their intellectual development, it would ultimately uplift the whole race, right?
That was the idea.
It's interesting because Du Bois is basically saying education isn't just about getting a job, it's about empowering people, giving them a voice, enabling them to challenge the status quo.
And that can be a very threatening idea to those in power.
Oh, absolutely. Education has always been a powerful tool for social change, and Du Bois understood that.
Definitely. Although this idea of a talented 10th has also been criticized, for being elitist.
Yeah, like it creates a division within the Black community.
Exactly.
It's a tough one, this balance between lifting everyone up and also nurturing leaders.
It's a complex issue for sure, and probably both strategies are needed for real change.
Yeah, there's never a single simple answer, is there? Okay, so let's shift gears to Chapter 4 of The Meaning of Progress.
All right.
Here, Du Bois gets incredibly personal. He takes us to a rural schoolhouse in Tennessee where he taught for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And the poverty and lack of opportunities he describes are just stark. It's a real punch in the gut.
You can feel the weight of that experience, the disillusionment of seeing firsthand just how much those systems hold people back.
Yeah, it makes you question what progress even means when so many are left behind.
Exactly. And then he introduces us to Josie, this bright young student full of dreams.
But her life is cut tragically short. It's heartbreaking.
It really underscores that progress can't just be about numbers and statistics. It has to be about creating a society where everyone has the chance to thrive.
It's so easy to get caught up in the big picture, the grand narrative of progress. But Josie's story brings it down to a human level.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you confront the real cost of inequality,
It's a powerful reminder that progress means nothing if it doesn't benefit everyone.
Exactly. One of the things that really sticks out to me in the Souls of Black Folk is how Du Bois weaves these ancient myths and stories into his analysis.
Oh, yeah, it's not what you typically expect in a sociological work.
Right, like it's pretty unexpected.
But it's so effective.
It is. So like in Chapter 5 of The Wings of Atalanta, he brings in this Greek myth to talk about Atlanta, Georgia.
Right, this booming city, the supposed symbol of the New South, all about industry and progress and everything.
Yeah, but Du Bois, he sees this darker side to all this, to the obsession with economic growth.
Definitely, and the myth of Atalanta kind of highlights that perfectly.
Okay, can you refresh my memory about the myth? It's been a while.
Sure, so Atalanta, she was this incredible athlete, like nobody could beat her in a race.
Oh, yeah.
And she said she would only marry the man who could outrun her, so this guy, Hippomenes, he figured out a trick. He used these golden apples to distract her during the race.
Oh, right. And she gets distracted, loses the race, and loses her freedom.
Exactly. So Du Bois is saying that Atlanta, just like Atalanta, is getting sidetracked by these golden apples, these temptations of material wealth.
And forgetting about what really matters.
Exactly. He's worried that in this race for progress, Atlanta, and maybe even the whole South, is kind of sacrificing its soul.
Like they're cutting corners.
Right. They're so focused on catching up economically that they're willing to overlook things like social justice, equality, basic human decency even.
Yeah. And, it's so relevant today, this idea of giving up your values for economic gain.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like we're always told growth is the answer, but what about the cost?
Right. What are we losing along the way?
Exactly. The environment, social equality makes you wonder if we're all just chasing those golden apples without thinking about the consequences.
And I think Du Bois would say we are. He's warning us that real progress can't just be about money.
It has to be about creating a society that's just and fair for everyone, not just a select few. Okay, so where do we find those wings of Atalanta, the things that can lift us above this materialist mindset?
Well, Du Bois seems to believe that education is key, particularly education at historically Black universities.
Okay, interesting.
he saw these institutions as more than just places for job training. They were about nurturing critical thinking, encouraging intellectual curiosity, creating spaces where Black people could develop their own ideas.
And challenge the status quo.
Exactly. So it's about empowerment, not just economic advancement, right?
Right. And that's even more powerful when you think about the context. Like, Black people were denied access to education for so long.
Oh, absolutely. For Du Bois, education was a political act, a way to challenge the power structure.
It's like reclaiming your agency.
Exactly.
Okay, so Chapter 6 of The Training of Black Men kind of digs deeper into this idea of education as liberation. But Du Bois acknowledges it's not a single issue. There are all these different schools of thought about the role of Black people in America.
Right. He talks about assimilation, this idea of just blending in, and then the belief that Black people are inherently inferior, and then this striving for true manhood.
And those first two are basically saying, accept your place.
Which is just
infuriating.
It is, but Du Bois rejects those ideas completely. He argues that true manhood, true citizenship, requires more than just being able to work.
It's about intellectual development, critical thinking, being able to fully participate in society.
Being seen as equals, not just workers.
Exactly.
But then Du Bois also critiques this overemphasis on industrial education. He's not against it, but he's concerned that it limits Black people's possibilities.
Right, like it keeps them trapped in the cycle of manual labor.
It's like he's saying, yeah, learn a trade, but also learn to think for yourself, to question things, to lead.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to the talented 10th idea.
Right. Du Bois believed this group of educated Black individuals would be essential for driving progress.
The teachers, the doctors, the artists, the thinkers. Yeah, the ones who could use their knowledge and influence to fight for equality and justice.
It's a bold vision.
It is, and it's still debated today. Some see it as elitist, creating a hierarchy.
And others see it as necessary, having those leaders to challenge the system.
It's complex.
It is. It is. Okay, so we've talked about double consciousness, this internal struggle of being both Black and American. And we've gotten into the debate about the best way for Black people to advance, but now I want to get a sense of what life was actually like for Black people in the South back then.
Yeah, okay, so in Chapter 7 of the Black Belt, Du Bois takes us to Dougherty County, Georgia.
Okay.
This is the heart of the Black Belt, where Black people made up the majority of the population.
And what does he describe?
He paints this picture of deep poverty, limited opportunities, and just constant discrimination.
It's not just data and statistics, though, right?
No, he brings in those human stories, the lived experiences.
But you really feel what it was like to be Black in the South.
Exactly, to face the daily indignities of segregation, to struggle against those economic forces that kept you trapped.
He wants you to understand the weight of that reality. I'm guessing cotton plays a big role here.
It does. In Chapter 8 of The Quest of the Golden Fleece, Du Bois connects the cotton industry to that ancient Greek myth of Jason's quest. He uses it to show how this sharecropping system, which was supposed to offer Black farmers a path to independence, actually trapped them in this cycle of debt.
It's like the Golden Fleece was always just out of reach.
Exactly. They had to borrow money at crazy high interest rates, always owing white landowners, barely surviving while they were the ones producing all the wealth.
It's just another way the system was rigged against them, even after slavery.
Absolutely. And the exploitation wasn't just economic. In Chapter 9 of The Sons of Master and Man, Du Bois explores the social dynamics between Black and white people.
Okay, so the unspoken rules.
Right. This whole code of conduct, all about maintaining white supremacy.
Sounds exhausting.
Oh, it was this constant awareness of your place, the fear of messing up.
It was a way to control them, to keep them in a subordinate position.
Exactly. And it also prevented any real human connection between Black and white people, which Du Bois saw as a major obstacle to progress.
Like they're living in two separate worlds.
And that breeds suspicion, mistrust. It makes it really hard to challenge the systems that benefit one group at the expense of another.
Okay, let's shift to Chapter 10 of The Faith of the Fathers.
All right, this one takes us into the world of the Black church, which was such a vital part of Black life at the time.
Yeah, it wasn't just a place of worship, right?
No, it was like a community center, a source of strength in the face of oppression.
And Du Bois doesn't just talk about it abstractly. He really captures the atmosphere of the church services, the music, the preaching.
The emotion.
Exactly. You can almost hear the music and feel the energy.
He talks about the spirituals, those sorrow songs born from slavery, expressing both the pain and the hope.
It's incredible how he connects the Black church back to Africa. those ancestral traditions that survived through slavery.
It's like this unbroken line of faith and resilience.
And the Black church was more than just a source of comfort.
Right. It was also where a lot of leaders emerged, honing their skills, building networks, developing a shared vision for social change.
It was a refuge and a launching pad for resistance. Such a powerful image.
It is, and it speaks to Du Bois' ability to capture the complexity of the Black experience, the pain and the joy, the struggle and the resilience.
Okay, I'm ready for a change of pace because Chapter 11 of The Passing of the Firstborn is probably the most personal chapter in the whole book.
Oh, yeah, it's heartbreaking.
This is where Du Bois shares the story of losing his infant son, Burckhardt.
It's so raw and honest, you really feel the depth of his grief.
But even in this moment of personal tragedy, he connects it to this bigger picture of racial injustice.
Right, he talks about how his son's death was partly due to the lack of proper health care for Black people.
It's like a symbol of the countless losses Black communities suffered because of poverty and discrimination.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that racism has real, tangible consequences. It's not just an abstract concept.
It makes you wonder if Du Bois could have written this book, explored these ideas so deeply, without experiencing that loss.
It's hard to say, but that pain definitely gives his work this urgency, a deeper meaning.
It's like turning personal pain into something meaningful, something that can help others.
And in the next chapter, Du Bois introduces us to someone who embodied that idea of overcoming adversity.
You mean Alexander Crummell from chapter 12?
Yes, he was this extraordinary Black priest, scholar, activist who faced incredible obstacles in his life.
Tell me about him.
Well, he was denied entry to American seminaries because of his race, so he had to go to England to study.
Wow.
He faced discrimination constantly, but he never gave up on his ideals, his belief in the potential of Black people.
He sounds like an incredible person.
He was. And Du Bois uses his story to explore what it meant to be a Black intellectual in a society that often ignored Black voices.
Like he's saying, don't underestimate us.
Right. Exactly. Crummell's life shows the power of perseverance, of faith, and the pursuit of knowledge, even when the odds are stacked against you.
We need more stories like his today.
Definitely. Stories that remind us that even in the darkest times, there's always hope, and there are people who light the way forward.
And that's one of the things that makes the souls of Black folk so timeless.
It's not just a historical document. It's a source of inspiration, a call to action.
It's a reminder that the fight for justice is ongoing, and we all have a part to play.
And that's where we'll pick up in the last part of our deep dive, exploring the story of John and the power of those sorrow songs.
Welcome back. Going through the souls of Black folk, I keep wondering, how did Du Bois pull it off?
What do you mean?
Like, how did he make this book that's so deeply personal but also super political?
It's amazing, right? I think it speaks to his skill as a writer, but also just his deep understanding of the human experience.
Yeah.
He knew that the personal is always political, especially when it comes to race in America.
That's so true. Okay, so back to the book. In chapter 13 of The Coming of John, we meet this young Black man, John, who's full of hope, but kind of represents the struggles of his generation.
Yeah, John grows up in the rural South, but gets this chance to go to this prestigious Black university in the North.
So he gets exposed to this whole different world.
Exactly, and he comes back home, ready to make a difference, full of idealism.
But I'm sensing this isn't going to be a happy ending.
You're right. John's education, it's opened his eyes to a world where Black people are treated with respect and dignity.
But that's not the world he comes back to.
Nope, he crashes right into the wall of Jim Crow segregation.
Oof, talk about a reality check.
It is. He's stuck between two worlds. He doesn't quite fit in either anymore.
Too educated for the white folks.
Yeah, they see him as a threat, but then even some of the Black folks see him as different, maybe out of touch because he's been away.
It's tragic. He just wants to help, but faces pushback from both sides.
And what makes it even more powerful is that Du Bois introduces this other character, a white guy, also named John.
Oh, wow, like a parallel story.
Exactly. And white John just, cruises through life because he's white. He has every opportunity that Black John is denied.
It's a stark reminder of how deeply rooted racism is, how it affects every single thing.
Absolutely. Even just having the same name.
So what happens to Black John in the story? Does he find a way to make things better?
Well, I don't want to spoil the ending.
Okay.
But let's just say Du Bois doesn't give us easy answers. The story ends with this mix of hope and despair, like the reality for Black people in America.
That's what makes this book so powerful. It doesn't try to sugarcoat things. It just grapples with the messy truth about race and identity.
And we're still grappling with those same things today.
Absolutely. Okay, on to the final chapter we'll talk about. Chapter 14 of the Sorrow Songs.
This is where Du Bois really gets into Black music, the power of those spirituals that came out of slavery.
This is one of the chapters I was most excited about.
Oh, it's incredible the way he connects the music, the emotion, the history.
Yeah, he sees these songs as more than just melodies. They're like messages from the slaves to the world.
Exactly, a way to express their sorrows, hopes, longings, all those things they weren't allowed to say out loud.
And the songs carry all this weight, centuries of pain and resilience, the memories of slavery, but also this belief in a better future.
He gives us specific examples, right? Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Steal Away to Jesus, these songs we might know, but they take on a whole new meaning.
When you understand where they came from.
Exactly. It's like Du Bois saying, listen closely and you'll hear the heart of Black America.
It's amazing how music can do that, connect us to something so much bigger.
And for Du Bois, these sorrow songs weren't just about the past. He thought they were still relevant, offering strength and inspiration to Black people in his time.
Like a reminder of their shared history, both the struggles and the triumphs.
Exactly. They were born out of suffering, but they also represent resistance, this reclaiming of their humanity in the face of oppression.
And that's a message that speaks to everyone, right? We all have our own sorrow songs, in a way.
Absolutely. Those ways we express pain and resilience and hope.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the souls of Black folk, what do you think is the key takeaway for our listeners?
Well, I think Du Bois gives us this amazing framework for understanding race in America. He makes us think critically about what progress really means.
About the power of education, about fighting for justice?
Right, but it's more than just an intellectual exercise. He wants us to really feel it, to see the world through the eyes of those who have been marginalized.
To empathize with their stories.
Exactly. It's a call to action, a reminder that we all have a responsibility to build a better world.
And that's what makes the souls of Black folk so important. Even over 100 years later, it's still relevant. It's still pushing us to be better.
It's a book that sparks conversation, inspires change, and that's what makes it so powerful.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the souls of Black folk.